recently purchased a Gramercy cabinet makers, 5-inch cabinet makers file, rasp, wood rasp, and I just wanted to give you a description of the rasp from the website. It says that the Gramercy tools rasps are hand cut, and you will be surprised not only by how fast they work, but by how smooth the surface they leave. Made of surgical grade stainless steel, blah, blah, blah. It gives a description of the different types of rasps that they have. Ours is hand cut, so it's a hand cut rasp by a craftsman in Pakistan. And he has so the company Gramercy contracts with a craftsman in Pakistan to hand cut with a little tool each of the files that he makes, and then he sells them to Gramercy, who then sells us to us. And so the question, and then also I have another tool. This is a Nicholson 4-in-hand rasp. Cost about $15 at Lowe's or Home Depot, or you can get off of Amazon. This one is significantly more in price than this one. And so the question I want us to talk about today is, for you as a craftsman or a builder or someone who does things, is it better to purchase the expensive tool or to buy the cheap tool? So to start with, the Nicholson file rasp is an excellent tool. For $15, this tool will last you a lifetime, and it's well made. However, it is production, high mass produced in a warehouse. Thousands of these are made in a day, probably. So what you get is the difference between this one and this one is the pattern in the teeth, in the rasp, in the teeth of the rasp. So it's a tool maker or the artisan, the craftsman will sit there and hand punch each individual teeth in the rasp, and what you end up with is a random pattern. Whereas this machine made rasp, you get a very uniform teeth pattern. And so when you're working with wood and you run the rasp across the wood, what you end up with are grooves on the surface. And so a handmade, hand-cut rasp like this will keep you from getting those tool marks in the work. And so the question is that I want us to discuss is, how refined does our work need to be? Because that determines which tool that we purchase. For example, if you're making an axe handle and you're using it for rough work, and it doesn't really matter how it looks, it's just a matter of getting the job done, you may want to go with a cheaper tool like this. If it's a fancy cabriolet leg on some kind of fine piece of furniture, you may want to go with this because it's going to leave less tool marks. It's going to save you time. And so what you need to determine is your tolerance for detail. How much detail and time and effort needs to go into the work in order for it to be adequate or a good piece that's going to be produced. So first question is, how good is good enough? How much attention to detail does the work need to be that you need to do for it to be seen as an excellent or superior, while at the same time you're not putting so much time, attention, and resources into something that it's considered foolish at the end of the day? And so many times when a person goes the extra step as a craftsman or a maker, you go the extra step to do something, you're considered a good craftsman. That's considered a good piece. But at the same time, if you go too far, you've wasted time and materials and effort and things that could have been going toward making something else or another piece, because you've just so at the end it's wasteful. And so there's even a name for people that tend to overemphasize details. We say they're obsessive compulsive. If you wash your hands one time, that's considered good enough. But if you end up washing your hands 4 or 5 times or many more times, we'd say that's excessive, or it's just not necessary. And so the other side of the discussion is laziness. So laziness is doing less than is typically expected or desired, and no one wants to be considered obsessive on the one side where it's just wasteful. No one wants to be considered lazy, of course, on the other side. So it's finding that middle ground between what tool is adequate for the job that I need to do, or how much effort do I need to put in, how much detail needs to be tolerated. What are we talking about here? And so both of these tools do the same thing. They take wood off of the surface, but one does it quickly, cheaply, but it leaves tool marks. The other is more expensive, but doesn't leave marks. It's a cleaner work. You don't have to necessarily sand as much at the end. So grooves to sand out, no grooves to save time. Which one do you do? So I guess for me, let's just define a craftsman first. So to me, a good craftsman can produce an excellent piece or a product or service in an efficient, timely manner with little waste of time and materials. And so that he or she can charge a fee that's reasonable for their time that they've put into creating whatever it is, and market price. So it's a reasonable amount of money that you've charged for the work that you've done, and at the same time you support your family. So you're doing something that's of good quality that you are able to replicate, do again and again, and at the end support your family. And so between the two, if we're trying to pick which of these two do I choose, what's the choice? Then we would say, well, we would need wisdom. And so let's look at wisdom for the craftsman. Wisdom is going to help us make this decision of which tool to buy. Wisdom is the ability to judge correctly and to follow the best course of action based on knowledge and understanding. So what you know, what you understand, the information that you have, you make a decision, and people that do that well, we'd say they're wise. So most of the historical cultures valued wisdom. The Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Romans, the Greeks, they all had writers and philosophers and people that spoke to this idea of wisdom. But the biblical concept of wisdom is different than how the world might consider wisdom. So how does the Christian or the believer then choose between what's their tolerance for detail? How good is good enough? And so we need wisdom to make that decision, and specifically biblical wisdom. So the first principle of biblical wisdom is that people should humble themselves before God in reverence, worship, and obedience to his commands. So we go to the Bible, we look at his word, we say, does the Bible say anything about how I should do this or make this decision? And so even the wisest man of all time, Solomon, who the world came for him to hear his wisdom, when he went away from the Lord, he began to make foolish decisions. And when he was older, at his old age, he did some things that caused his kingdom to be divided and split as a judgment from the Lord. So wisdom is going to help us make this decision, specifically biblical wisdom. And so I submit to you 4 things to think about as you are deciding, I'm going to buy a new tool, or I need this for my work. And there's obviously a cheaper version and a more expensive version. Which one should I make? So 4 things. Number 1, have you prayed and talked to God about the purchase of a particular tool, which I know sounds almost religious, super spiritual, but have you taken time to talk to God about, hey, God, I want to spend a whole bunch of money on this tool. What do you think? Or I'm going to go lowball and go this route. Which one should I do? Specifically, you're going to discuss with him about the cost of the tool, how it's going to affect your family. Will it please the Lord if you buy a tool or a piece of equipment, if it means placing your family in an economic hardship? $15 probably won't do it. You buy a $5,000 table saw, probably will. So you got to kind of look at those decisions. Or is it an investment that's going to help you make things better for your family? So is it going to hurt you, or is it going to help you? And the Lord will help you make that decision. Second thing, do you purchase this tool? By purchasing this tool, is it going to keep you from doing other things financially that you should have done first? In other words, you're choosing this first over other things that probably should have gotten taken care of. Number 3, are you being prideful in the purchase of the tool? Either self-congratulatory, oh, see how spiritual I am, I bought the $15 one instead of the expensive one. Or on the other side, are you being prideful and you're going to display this so everyone can see it, and you're going to brag about it on the internet, on your blog. No, just kidding. So don't make sure that pride's not coming into the decision making process in thinking about it. So that others, yeah. So number 4, it's okay to have something nice. And I think that for people that may have grown up with not as much money, to look at something like this or a nicer thing, it's hard for them to say, I just can't justify that. It's just not right. But I do think sometimes it's okay to have something nice. There's a saying, buy once, cry once. And the idea is if you buy the best tool that you can financially, typically the more expensive tools are better made. They have better made materials, and they will last you much longer typically. And so by buying the better quality tool first, you may not have to replace it again and again and again. Now, in this example, I don't know that that's necessarily true because this Nicholson file can get passed down from generation to generation. It's a pretty decent, nice tool. It's a good tool, and it will last you forever, and it's cheap. This one, the same thing. It's a well-made tool. It's probably a better grade of steel. It will last for a long time, but you have the randomness of the teeth pattern. So you just have to make the decision. Buy once, cry once. Thinking about, is it going to last you longer? Those type of things. So whatever decision you make with the Nicholson or the Gramercy, the cheap or the expensive or somewhere in between, good luck with your craft. I hope you the best. Craftsmanship is a lifelong endeavor. It's a process that we pursue. There's lots of lessons to learn, lots of things to think and talk about. Just don't ever stop making stuff, and we'll see you next time.